I've been thinking about the wonderful hospitality you've shown me here on YouTube. I just started my channel last July, and I just can't believe the outpouring of support that I've received. Every time you leave a comment sharing a story about your family or an experience, or telling me whether or not you're familiar with a word that I share, or if your favorite cornbread recipe or any of those things, it means so much to me, and I truly appreciate it. As I was thinking about that hospitality, I began to think about my favorite book on personality traits, Appalachian personality traits, and kind of the traits of Appalachian culture. It's Appalachian Values. It was written by Loyal Jones. So Loyal Jones is most famous for being the first director of the Appalachian Studies Center there at Berea in Kentucky. But Loyal Jones actually grew up right here where I live. So Brasstown, where I live, is a divided community. Half of it's in Cherokee County and half's in Clay County. And he grew up in Clay County, North Carolina. So I want to read to you today what he had to say about neighborliness and hospitality. Our independence is tempered by our basic belief in neighborliness and hospitality. Survival on the frontier sometimes required people to be hospitable, to take people in when night caught them on a journey, or keep them indefinitely if their house burned down. Until recent times, neighbors joined to help build houses and barns for those who needed them. No greater compliment could be paid a mountain family than that they were clever folks, meaning that they were quick to invite you to visit and generous with their food. My father told of eating at one home where the only food was sorghum and cornbread, but the host said graciously, "Just reach and get anything you want." We who were brought up on the value of hospitality will always have the urge to invite those who visit to stay for a meal or to spend the night. Even though this is not the custom over much of America now, unless a formal invitation is sent out well in advance. So this is just a fantastic book if you can find it. It has wonderful photos in it, and the photography is by Warren Brunner. That's a mouthful. Anyway, it's a great book if you can find it. But as I began to think about that hospitality that Loyal Jones is talking about, I was reminded of kind of the sayings, the common sayings of hospitality that I hear here in my area of Appalachia. I'll be interested to see if you're familiar with them too. But I remember one time I was telling Paul, my brother Paul, one of my friends, good friends, Mildred Johnson, she had been telling me she grew up in Swain County, North Carolina on Cable Branch, and back when she was a little girl, that's where she lived. But then the park, that's part of the park now is Cable Branch. Anyway, she was telling me that when she was a little girl that her family would go about once a year or maybe more, and they would walk all the way to see family in Cates Cove. Of course, they were going over the mountains. There was no main roads like there is today. And I was just amazed that she walked that far. And she said, well, back then we all walked. That's just what you did. You walked to where you went. But she said when they would go, they'd stay at least a week, before they come home. They weren't making any short trips over there and back unless there was some kind of emergency, that they would stay, and enjoy time with their family. Well, I was telling Paul this, and somehow we got silly and started thinking about when we were little kids, and Pap and Granny would be over at somebody's house, maybe late at night, and there's always picking and grinning going on, maybe some good food, and kids running around acting crazy and wild. And when it come time to go home, the people leaving would say, "Come go home with us." And the people that owned the house where you were leaving, they'd say, "Oh, just stay. You ought to just spend the night. You ought to just spend the night." And me and Paul got to talking about that, how that was so common in our childhood, and we got to being silly and saying we wish we could go back one time, and all of us convinced Pap and Granny to say, "Well, you know what? We will just spend the night. Where will we sleep?" Or, you know what? If it's the other way and people was at our house and we were saying, and they said, "Come go home with me," we'd say, "Okay, I believe I will," even though it was midnight or whatever. Anyway, we were just being silly. But those are two really common ones from when I was a child. Is if you were leaving somewhere, you'd say, "Come go home with me." And if somebody was leaving your house, you'd say, "Don't hurry off. You ought to just spend the night." A local older lady told me that a lot of times her family would just spend the night when they were visiting with other family, even though they lived really near each other. If they wanted to spend the night, they'd just spend the night. Well, knowing that both families had a whole lot of kids, I said, "How did that work?" And she said, "Oh, we'd sleep crossways in the bed, and you could fit more kids that way." So sometimes that actually did happen. I've jotted down some other ones, though, to talk about. Of course, if you didn't all fit in the bed, you could have a pallet in the floor, and you could sleep on that, if you know what a pallet is. Mary Lou McKillop, she's a blind pig reader, and she shared with me that when she was a young girl, she grew up in Marble, North Carolina, that they would say, if somebody knocked on the door, they'd say, "Come in if your nose is clean." So maybe they were really wanting to know if you were sick, but it's more than likely that's just kind of a teasing thing. And I've never heard anybody say that, but when Mary Lou shared that, I just thought that was really cute, and really, it made me smile for sure. In the winter time, it's getting to be spring of the year now, but in the winter time, one of my favorites is somebody will say, if you go to see them, or maybe you're not even planning on going in, you just had to deliver something or take something to them, and they'll say, "Oh, come in and warm, come in and warm, come in and sit by the fire, come in and warm." So I really like that one. Another one kind of goes back to the "come go home with me," is you'll hear people say, "Yuns, yuns come, yuns come." So if you're seeing somebody, maybe you run into them at the store and you've been chatting and then you're about to walk off, they'll say, "Now you yuns come," just meaning come see us, and that's another one, come see us. That's a really common one, come see us. And when you're leaving, a common one is just to say, "See ya, we'll see ya." When I was a teenager, I don't know why, for some reason that got on my last nerve. I just got to where I hated to hear people say, "We'll see ya." And I heard a lot of people say it, so that was bad. But that was just my superior. You know how sometimes when we're teenagers, our brain gets a little superior? That's all that was, because it doesn't bother me in the least now when somebody says, "We'll see ya." And in fact, I say it myself when I'm leaving. I'll say, "Okay, we'll see ya." So that's a good one. Another one is if somebody knocks on the door, you might say, "Come on in the house," or you see them in the yard or outside, you hear them drive up, so you go out and say, "Come on in the house and we'll get a bite to eat." That's another one, a bite to eat. Another, especially in older books you'll read about in days gone by when people maybe didn't hear you arriving, if you arrived on foot or something, they called it "hello in the house." So you're supposed to alert people that you were there. You helloed the house to make sure they knew that you were on the property and you were about to come in. Thinking about not about coming seeing people, but just about how you are, how you're doing, those come to mind. So of course, if you ask someone how they're doing, they may say they're fair to middling. That's a one you'll hear that's really common. My favorite one, and I don't really hear this at all, but I heard Pap say it, is someone asks you how you're doing and you'll say, "I'm as well as common." So that's a really old way of saying that you're doing okay. And I was privileged one time to get to read one of my great-grandmother's letters that she had written someone, and in it she said, "We're all as well as common." She said that was common. Pap would just say "very well." If somebody asked him how he was doing, he would say "very well." And I think I say that sometimes, I'm sure, because I got it from him. A cute one when the girls were little that I would say to them is "good night, sleep tight, and don't let the bed bugs bite." And one time they had a little girl spending the night with them, and I got them all situated, and they were about to go off to sleep, and I said that. I said, "Okay, good night, sleep tight, and don't let the bed bugs bite." And that little girl just looked at me real serious, and then I knew what it was. I said, "Oh, your mama says that too, doesn't she?" And she said, "Yes, my mama says that." So she couldn't believe Corey and Katie's mama said it too, One common one I'm sure you've heard of is just "have you eat yet?" So we're always wanting to feed people. "Have you eat yet?" That's common throughout the South for sure. And one last one, proud to be here. And that's kind of how I feel. What I'm trying to say with this video is that I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be on this channel with all of you who have supported me. In Appalachia, of course, pride or proud is used in the common way that you'd be familiar with. Pride goes before a fall, all those kind of things, that it's bad to be prideful, that you should be humble. But it's also used in a different manner. So proud in Appalachia, the way I'm using it, I'm proud to be here, is more of showing sincerity. I'm being sincere. I'm being respectful. It's almost like I'm saying I'm honored. I'm honored to be here with you. I'm honored by the support that you've shown me so far. So when I say I'm proud to be here, that's what I mean. I'm honored by the support that you've showed me, and I so appreciate it. And as always, I hope you'll drop back by often as I celebrate Appalachia.